Okay, we're going to speak about our last project, which is rather a cycle of installations and experiments. And we decided to do that according to the thematic of this symposium. But a good entry point for this presentation, we were thinking, is a project we did a few years ago called Viridis. And Viridis intended to connect real life and virtual life. It's really easy. In fact, the project is a spirulina farm established in the mountains in the south of France. The spirulina is an algae. It's known as a good protein complement for nutrients and with a lot of vitamins and oligoelements. And it has been developed also in humanitarian context. For people who don't have access to agriculture or to meat. So we did a farm in the mountains and we equipped this farm with sensors and actuators. And each day, every hour, we got the values from the data. And this is a global summary of the season from the farm. And while we were growing and harvesting the spirulina, we built a video game online, and this game was a direct extension for the players, both to play a specific adventure, but also to manage and to get a direct feedback on the real spirulina farm. So the first intention of the project was to think about the idea of the work and how to rethink the way to work from a collective or in a horizontal perspective. And in fact, it appeared, and it was really interesting that it goes really beyond, because most of the community was so much involved. We understood that it was not only something related to work, but also to empathy, to projection, to care. The idea of care resulted in the project, because among the communities we had a lot of players who redid the game several times just to be able to continue to work and to be involved in the spirulina farm. And each day we got feedbacks from the community, and they say, okay, there's a problem with the values, why the pH, or why the smell is why? Because we had a lot of indicators like the smell, the density, the electroconductivity, and sometimes the day it's really warm, so the pH is rising a lot, so people were really worried and concerned. So there was a direct feedback between the video game and the reality, and from that we produced a lot of experiments and situations like installations. You can see to the bottom we experimented how to produce our own nutrients and entrants rather than using the usual components, chemical components, how to produce your own. So, for example, how to produce nitrates or phosphate or iron. So for that, we had to crush, to burn bones, to use to make some iron syrup with nails and lemon juice. A lot of experiments and craft and do-it-yourself attitude. It was something very important in the project. And working with spirulina was really interesting, because when you're thinking about an algae, you're not thinking that as an entity who has sentiments, feelings, but in fact it developed a lot of attention. And from that, in our work, we developed a lot of ideas. And one of the main topic now in our current practice is about the symbiosis and the remediation. So we have a cycle, and the cycle is called myco, and it refers to the myco remediation.
Maybe what I can add, just what you said, is that we use science fiction. We use fiction, narratives, that's a good way to communicate with the audience. And with this project, MyCore, it's also an history. It's a fiction. So we can develop imaginaries. We can go beyond the truth, the science, and all the imaginative ideas can come true with art practices. So MyCore stands for mycoremediation, which is a practice of cure an earth which has been polluted, like with radiation. The mushrooms can help to clean, and so that's called mycoremediation. And we thought, okay, we have a problem, we human, and maybe we can try to fix it. And this problem is the way we are thinking our actions and the way we are thinking nature and our environment. And mushrooms are very, very inspiring because they use this symbiosis, and that's something that we lack a lot. And so we try to work on this idea. How can we be fixed by something more inspiring, like mushrooms can do, and be and start to be more in symbiosis with our environment. So we created a new fiction, and this fiction has multiple layers, and we use kombucha, which is a beverage with the tea, sugar, and this, which is called a mother. The kombucha is a mother. So even the name, how well we deal with this is very interesting. You cannot sell the mother. You give it. You share it. So it has a social connection too. So we use kombucha. We use also slime, and we decided to kind of separate the two operating systems. One is kind of a mother, so it fits us, and the other one is more like the reasonable decision maker. So the slime is more like, I'm going to make strict decision for you, and the kombucha is going to take care of us. So we work on the very on two sides, and also what we try to do is to think communication between the kombucha, between the slime, and between us. So we are creating systems with electrodes, with sounds, with also sculpture. Okay.
Yeah, we show some pictures about the current experiments, but just to give you a little precision, we were very influenced also about the new classification, not so new of course in biology, about the phylogenetic classification systems, and the idea also there are lateral transfer between the different clades. So that means when I'm speaking about the lateral transfer, that means we have transfer from the bacteria or from the archaea to the eukaryote. We are composed of several things, and we are not only from a genetic point of view made of this DNA. So that was also our point of view, how to make several entities able to communicate together, and how these entities could remediate us as humans. And the Physarum polycephalum, differently known as a blob or as a slime mold, is a good is really a good entity to study, because it's usually used in the laboratories, and it's known to solve mazes or topographic problems like the optimization of the highway, or trying to find the easiest and the shortest path. And why? Because it needs to survive and it needs to get food. So it's very simple and very primitive organism. It's one of the first organisms on Earth, but it's really interesting because it develops a kind of logic, and we were really amazed about the different experiments done in the laboratories with the blob. But we were thinking, okay, it's cool. We can produce logical gate. We can think a living organism like the slime mold as almost like an electronic device with which would obey to logical condition. And from that, we have to learn. We have to learn from the behavior, its behavior, how we could include it in industry. So it was interesting, but meanwhile, we were thinking more as not being a solver agent, but a counter agent. So from one side, we have the kombucha mother installation, which feeds us, which heals us, which is a global entity. And from the other side, we have this worker, this little agent, which is working a lot. And we were thinking, okay, this has not to be a solver agent, but a counter agent, and how it could be mixed to our bodies or to synthetic products or entities.
So what we did is to first to think the body, the human body, as an energy map. And so in this, we can imagine that we have our difficulties also are driven by the problems we could have in this kind of energy communication in our own body. So we had all this imaginary map, and as the slime is used to solve problems and also to drive new maps, we started to think that we could make the connection between what we call the our spiritual body and the slime mold. So we started to print some sculpture in 3D of human skull and bones, and also have maps on kind of cardboard. And now the project is about to make everything communicate. So it's kind of show the path. Maybe it will be the good one, maybe it will be the wrong one.
Yeah, in fact, also, rather than playing with the logic and the deterministic way of using the Physarum, the blob, we were more inspired by esoteric and different kind of mythologies. So we intend to create our own mythograms, kind of pictures which could be invaded and reappropriated by the blob. And we were also inspired by some spiritist practices like the Ouija board. Maybe some of you already know that, which was practiced in the 18th or 19th century to make some predictions around the table, and someone is moving a little, like a little pointer towards the several letters and combine them to create a language or answers to a question to the spirits. So to the left you have also an engraving of a monk. It was in the 16th century, and it was a way to understand and to create a new global understanding of the world. So we were thinking, okay, from that we have several systems which are not really available to, are now really relevant today, because now we have a fully different understanding of the world. But when we didn't have the tools previously to understand the world, we needed to invent them, to figure out how from poetic, from symbolic way we could produce tools to understand the world and to be able to live in it. So it was really interesting to mix and to make a confrontation and combination between a living organism which obeys to its own rules and a logical system which uses language, which uses also a kind of logic, because language is logic, it's semiotic. Thank you. And a combination of the letters make words, and the combination of the words make sentences, and so on. So in the current state of the project, we are also making experiments with neural networks. So we have a triangle, the living organism, the non-human entity, the blood, the slime mold. We have the synthetic entities, which are the prints, the 3D prints made of plastic, or it could be something else. And we have the software entities, which produce meaning or not. And we are still very interested in the neural networks because they produce a new kind of language, and we need to feed them, as well as we need to feed the physarum, the blob. And this is just an example of the project. Here we have a full list of diseases. Maybe you know some of them, like the Black Death or the botulism. And feeding the neural network, we got that to the right. And it's really interesting because it produces nonsense words, but words enough meaningful. It reminds sometimes still the disease, but it reminds sometimes some goddess names. And our idea now is to think how the physarum would be able to produce a new kind of language through the neural networks. So this is not only a question of volumes of interfaces, it's also a question of process. So how to feed several processes at the same time, and how the physarum could be a counteragent to connect the several entities together and make something which would contribute to a new kind of remediation.
Yes.
Yep.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Maybe you have one question, one quick question. I just was thinking about, you said that all these systems you have to feed them. So this was interesting notion. So you're feeding blood system, you're feeding neural, right? So what have you, how you are thinking what you can do with it about, like reflecting it in art, or what are your most interesting findings about comparing this physical and neural?
For all the last work we did, as Gaspard said, the question of empathy is very, very here. And when you feed, you take care. I think that what we lack the most now is to take care, and take care of each other. It's also taking care of all the surroundings. And the feeding question is very, very important, because I think we feed, but also we are fed in return. So
we haven't said that, but with the kombucha, the idea is to produce a ritual, and we're creating it. We're creating a shamanic drum, and this shamanic drum is including a ritual, and we drink the kombucha, but we're making a connection with some sacred text, the Rig Vedas, and the Soma is a drink, so there's a relationship between the fact to drink this kind of sacred drink and being transformed by the drink.
And even when you think about it, when we are making schools, it's kind of, it has a human shape. So it's kind of a sacrifice. And so we are inspired a lot by myth, and when you think about it, it's always a question of sacrifice and feed and fed and empathy. So
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.